The morning the bullying happened, nobody noticed the storm it would unleash, because it began with something small and quiet, the kind of moment the world usually ignores, a thin young boy named Ethan Miller standing alone near the rusted bike rack at Brookdale Middle School while a group of louder, stronger kids circled a girl who kept her eyes on the ground and her backpack clutched to her chest, and in that instant, before anyone understood what courage looked like, Ethan felt his heart pound so hard it almost drowned out the laughter around him, because he had seen cruelty before and had learned how easy it was to look away, but something about the way the girl's hands trembled and how she tried to make herself invisible broke something open inside him, and as the story begins right here, pause for a moment, and if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right even when you're scared, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel for more real stories, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this story belongs to all of us. The girl's name was Lily Carter, small for her age, with dark hair tied back in a messy ponytail and eyes that carried a sadness far too heavy for someone so young, and what most of the kids didn't know was that Lily was new to town, trying to escape a past full of whispers and stares, and that her father was a man whose name carried weight on highways and in biker bars across the country, a man people feared but rarely understood, a Hell's Angel whose loyalty was as fierce as his temper, but none of that mattered in the schoolyard where cruelty wore the face of teenage laughter, and when one boy shoved Lily's books to the ground and another mocked the patch stitched on her jacket, Ethan felt his legs move before his mind could stop them, stepping between Lily and the bullies with a voice that shook but didn't break, telling them to leave her alone, and the laughter turned on him instantly, pushing him back, calling him weak, reminding him he was smaller, poorer, easier to crush, and in those seconds Ethan tasted fear like metal in his mouth, remembering every time he'd been shoved or ignored, every time teachers were too busy to notice, but he didn't step away, he bent down, picked up Lily's books with hands that trembled, and stood there absorbing every insult because something deep inside told him that walking away would hurt more than any bruise. The bullies eventually lost interest, not because they felt shame but because the bell rang, and as they scattered, Ethan noticed Lily staring at him with wide eyes, gratitude and disbelief mixing on her face, and though neither of them said a word, something unspoken passed between them, a fragile trust formed in the ruins of a cruel moment. The rest of the day Ethan waited for retaliation, for whispers to turn into fists, but what he didn't expect was the quiet knock at his front door that evening, his mother wiping her hands on a towel as she opened it to find Lily standing there alone, clutching a paper bag with a thank you note inside written in careful, uneven letters, and behind her, parked across the street like a shadow, was a massive black motorcycle, its engine silent but its presence unmistakable, and though Lily never mentioned her father, Ethan felt a strange chill, realizing that some stories were bigger than the schoolyard. The next morning dawned gray and tense, and as Ethan walked toward Brookdale Middle School, he noticed the sound first, a distant rumble that felt less like noise and more like an approaching heartbeat, and as the school came into view, so did the impossible sight of dozens of motorcycles lined up along the curb, chrome gleaming under the dull sky, leather jackets bearing patches that whispered danger and loyalty in equal measure, parents standing frozen in shock, teachers rushing toward the entrance with phones in their hands, and students staring wide-eyed from behind classroom windows, and at the center of it all stood Lily's father, Marcus Carter, tall and broad, his beard streaked with gray, eyes hidden behind dark glasses, his presence calm but heavy with unspoken power. Fear rippled through the crowd because people had learned to fear symbols more than stories, but Marcus didn't shout or threaten, he simply stood there, waiting, until the principal emerged, pale and uncertain, and though no one could hear what was said, the message was clear enough that even the bullies hiding in the back of the crowd felt it in their bones, that Lily Carter was not alone, that cruelty had consequences, and that sometimes protection came from unexpected places. Yet what truly changed the day was what happened next, when Marcus removed his helmet and walked past the stunned crowd straight into the school, asking quietly to meet the boy who had stood up for his daughter, and when Ethan was called out of class, his knees nearly buckled, expecting punishment or trouble, but instead he found himself standing in front of a man whose reputation loomed larger than life, and though Marcus's voice was low and rough, his words carried a warmth that surprised everyone in the room, because he didn't praise violence or promise revenge. He thanked Ethan for his courage, for seeing Lily as a human being rather than a label, and in that moment Ethan understood that strength didn't always look like fists or engines roaring. Sometimes it looked like a hand placed gently on a shoulder. The days that followed were different, whispers replaced by respect, the bullies shrinking into the background as teachers paid closer attention and students began to question their own silence, and Lily slowly started to smile again, sitting beside Ethan at lunch, finding comfort in small, ordinary moments that felt extraordinary after everything she'd endured. And though the motorcycles disappeared as quietly as they arrived, their message lingered, not as fear but as a reminder that kindness could echo louder than cruelty. Weeks later, during a school assembly about bullying, Ethan was asked to stand on stage, his voice still shaking but steadier now, and as he spoke about that day by the bike rack, about choosing to act despite fear, he saw Lily in the front row, her eyes shining, and behind her, unnoticed by most, Marcus Carter stood at the back of the auditorium, arms crossed, nodding slowly, a silent guardian whose world was far more complex than the rumors allowed. Life didn't become perfect after that, challenges remained, scars didn't vanish overnight, but something fundamental had shifted. A belief took root in Ethan that one person could matter, that even the smallest act could ripple outward in ways no one could predict, and as time moved on, the story of the bikes flooding the school became legend, told and retold, often missing the quiet truth at its center, that it all began with a boy who decided not to look away. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that courage can come in unexpected forms and kindness can change lives, take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe so these stories keep reaching the people who need them most. And before this story ends, leave a comment telling us what moment moved you the most and why, because your words might be the encouragement someone else is waiting for. And as the final bell rings on this chapter, remember that the world doesn't change through grand gestures alone but through quiet choices made by ordinary people, choices like the one Ethan made that day, choices that remind us all that even in a world full of noise, compassion still has the power to roar.